Welcome to Informed by Alan Roebke this November 3rd, 2018. First and foremost, I want you people to understand you have an obligation to your democracy to get out and vote on Tuesday. I think it's probably the most important election we've had in a long time, and I want to caution you about the chaos that could come out of this thing if the Democrats control the House and Republicans control the Senate. I think it's pretty well understood now that the Republicans are going to maintain the Senate. Heitkamp in North Dakota and her comments pretty well took her out, and a couple other Democrats. So from a standpoint of we're going to have a Republican Senate, and we still have to hope and pray that we get a Republican House. And my concern is not that I'm pro-Republican, it's the fact that I don't think we will get anything done with Trump as president if we have a divided Congress, and that the Pelosi Democrats will focus on impeachment and doing everything they possibly can to disrupt this presidency, and which means we'll have a 2-year period where absolutely nothing gets done. The Chinese will be as happy as heck. The North Korean leader will be as happy as heck. Iran will be happy. And so those are the issues that we will face if indeed the Republicans lose the House. And I think that's a very scary thought from this seasoned old politician. And when we also look at things, I think it's very sad that we didn't have an open content discussion with our candidates. These 30-second TV ads are a disaster, both for the candidates as well as the voting public. And we continue to hear about all the money that is been coming into Minnesota, over $100 million, and they're talking about which candidate got the money. The real issue is, where did all that money go? And if I would be on the CTV tower in Goodall at Southern Minnesota TV channel over-the-air broadcasts, as well as here in Alexandria and in Fargo, North Dakota, where I have a transmitter and everything just sitting there on a public TV tower that have put restrictions on me for equipment that I can easily overcome now, and but it stopped me dead in the tracks at the time. And the speculator that I continue to be held hostage to, and yet now he won't even talk to me. So I'm extremely upset about Amy Klobuchar driving 87 counties, yet her most important job for this election cycle was to see that the public airways are there to serve the public, and plain and simple, they're not. With this shrinking of TV channels, there's still plenty of room for content, but when I look at the 4 electric co-ops in southern Minnesota, where you guys are listening from, Benco, South Central Electric, Federated Electric, and Brown County Electorate, of not even talking to me or allowing me to put some content on the 3 towers that the public owns down there. And a lot of public money over the years has made that happen, and both through electric power generation or supporting these co-ops, and firmly believe they have an obligation to see that the public airways is used to see the public. And what I'm getting at, rather than these 30-second ads, if I'd have been on TV, these candidates would have had a chance to come in and talk to me or somebody else that I arranged, or they themselves wanted to question them. So we we have a very disappointing election cycle here as far as information. The voters are not informed. Our two political parties are not put in a task. When I asked the Democratic chairman on last week's program about what about this taxation of charities and paying a 4 to 5 times an income tax rate higher than our richest citizens pay or our corporations pay, he said, I know nothing about it. I mean, this is what happens to a society when we have elected officials as well as businesses like CTV and these 4 electric co-ops saying, hey, the public airways is there to serve the public and not cell phone companies. And the other interesting thing that I found out this week when I was doing some surfing where people such as Selective TV here in Alexandria or North Dakota Public TV or the people in the Twin Cities, some of these speculators that own these channels and manage content, which is what, reruns or religious programming, when we are supposed to have separation of church and state. I looked at YouTube now. YouTube claims that they have about 50 million individuals or corporations or nonprofits with their own YouTube channel. 50 million. And I continue to have the mayor of Alexandria, thriving financial type people that say, well, today you can put your content out there. The public airways, we're using them the way we see fit. And you see what I'm talking about as far as YouTube / Inform TV channel. When you're competing with 50 million channels, and when people get home from work, they're tired out, and what do they want to do? Flick a few channels on TV, and our FCC and people like Amy Klobuchar, basically we're down to 30 working channels, people, and you can obviously put 6 channels with definition that serves the public. And so it's not we're totally a lack of channels, it's the fact that real content producers like myself that have had a lifetime of experience, good, fair, and ugly, cannot talk to the citizens, cannot show things to the citizens, cannot bring people in. And excuse me, when you look at this mess called 50,000 channels, and then the other thing I want you to understand, I talked last program about hand delivering Jeff Broyne, Mr. Ethanol in the United States, and has my phone number on it and never got back to me. I've called Poet Ethanol a number of times to their media person, never gets back to me. I've also left word with Ag Secretary Perdue's office that I want to talk to him about the Roebke plan. Don't get any response. And what I'm getting at, people here, when Chuck Canton and I, in the presence of Congressman Rick Nolan, we sold a complete understanding to a real leader, Tip O'Neill, who happened to be a strong, a staunch Democrat. It only took 50 minutes for the speaker to fully grasp what we were presenting and said, you got my support, which meant it was a done deal. And here we have Sony Perdue that in that tape, and I'm going to run his portion again so you see or can listen to the whole question and answer period from other media people that were there. And so if a person like myself has access to a mass market, as well as elected or appointed officials, we know how to get things done on a very short basis. And if it took 50 minutes to sell Tip O'Neill on sugar policy that's lasted for over 30 years with no subsidies, certainly 25 minutes if Sony Perdue is a competent Secretary of Agriculture. And you have to remember, I've in my career probably personally talked to at least 4, if not 5, Secretary of Agricultures. When we were doing the sugar deal, actually went to the airport, followed him to on his way to his plane to see that secretary understood agriculture. And so from a standpoint of getting a job done, I know how to get the job done. The other thing that I want you to understand with media and not utilizing the resources that are out there to serve the public. I went south of Osakis a couple of times this week to look at the tower progress that's going on, that KSDP is doing. They have put up a temporary channel 42, and remember, anything from channel 36 and down is what's going to be left, and the bottom 5 have too much static, nobody wants them, so we're down to 30 or 31 channels. Here, under people's lack of leadership or lack of understanding, like Amy Klobuchar and the rest of the Congress, both House and Senate, that are supposed to see that the public airways serve the public, KSDP has now connected up about 1,000 feet a temporary antennas as they rebuild or remove the big antenna on the top, that they'll replace with another huge antenna that serves just one channel. And they've got old waveguide transmission line going up there. It's basically I suppose it's a 12 by 6 system that basically can put out a huge amount of power in the old analog days, and they're taking that down. But in the process, they're going to go off this temporary channel and temporary antenna for probably a month, and when that's done, it's worthless. And yet I had approached KSDP and said, why don't you just put a channel up that I can have, that I did the interference check on, and you can use it, a high definition channel, and when it's done, I can use that signal. No, we don't do it that way. Instead of Amy Klobuchar and FCC is going to give them $2 million, probably $2 million plus, to put up a temporary antenna that'll be used for 30 days. And what I also want you to understand is Selective TV here and UHF TV in Wilmer are also broadcasting that. So the reality, they didn't need to put a temporary one up at all, other than that empowers the billion air Hubbard family. And so we look at a world, people, that common sense and what should be done to serve the public is not being done, and they get by with it. Why? Because we have no press. We censor a person like Alan Roebke, and when you look 2 miles away to the east, there's the CCO, or CBS New York, CBS Minneapolis is a better way to explain them. They're going to be dynamiting those cable bases on the side and let that thing drop. And instead of making some of that equipment available to me, so I could use it either here or another location to serve the public. And the Amy Klobuchars of the world do not want to see that happen. And that's how sad the world is, people we live in today, that the public is just not smart enough to understand what's going on, and the establishment must control things. Academia, the products of academia, the program products of academia must rule this country and must rule this state. And so when we look at the situation where we find ourselves in, that's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, it's just not the way it is, people. We're not utilizing our resources. The internet there is to just overwhelm us with meaningless information. The Chinese that I pointed out, and these soybean tariffs, is a way to influence our election, and it definitely is. Also talked to a farmer that agreed with me this week that there was no reason to have send him a $1.65 a bushel. One farmer I talked to had 65 bushel per acre soybean yield. His net payment is going to be $107 an acre, people, on a 65 bushel yield. And on his 1,500 acres, it's $160,000. And yet we were told by people like Colin Peterson and Tim Walls that the 2014 Farm Bill was getting away from these payments. Nothing was further from the truth in this whole process. And so I, as a concerned citizen, and I know you folks that are listening are concerned as well, first and foremost, we have to have a platform to see that the public is informed. Informed TV is the best way to do it, because I will see that you have a bipartisan look at your world, and to hold both parties accountable that their job is strictly to get good candidates to serve the people, not candidates to serve their party and their views. And I'm running down to just 20 some seconds. I'm going to play the complete question and answer from Sony Perdue and give you one more listen to the Democratic chairman that is not aware of taxation of our charities in the state of Minnesota. He needs to be held accountable as well. Mr. Chairman, as chairman of the Democratic Party and talking ethics here today, is it ethical, does the Democratic Party believe it's ethical to tax Minnesota nonprofit charities at the highest rate, 4 to 5 times anybody else?
I don't know enough about it. I just don't know enough about it.
And this unethical tax goes to pay off U.S. Bank stadium bonds? You should know about that, Mr. Chairman. These charities are furious and they're paying a ridiculous amount of tax, so the mission of their communities is hurt dramatically.
I hear you. I don't know enough about it.
I'm going to give you some info.
Thank you very much. I'm not an elected official, so you should talk to people who actually vote on issues like that. So, any other questions?
All right, I think we're ready. Fire away.
Okay, I guess I'll start. For the secretary, when you got in office, you even said at the beginning of this that you thought this would go faster than it has. What was the most unexpected aspect getting into the E15 discussion that has halted talks at this point?
What I was referring to was federal regulations generally. As governor, you're used to making decisions and getting things done. The federal government is a little more complicated than that, and complex than that, regarding all of the checkoffs back and forth and statutory timelines, and we have to have Office of Management and Budget to review everything. We do an interagency type thing. All those checks and balances are good, but they take way too much time. So it's very difficult to get things done quickly, and some of the things are fairly common sense. It frustrates me when we're not able to move more quickly on that. I'll give you an example of one of the frustrating things here that Representative Noem brought to my attention was the silly rodeo issue out here. And we're trying to get the girls and boys rodeo issue resolved, and that takes more time than I would like, but it's just common sense for people who know about those kind of things. But we create rules and regulations and laws sometimes that have unintended consequences. That's the frustrating part I was talking about.
Some of the ag economists are talking about the difference in E15 could be 2%, 3%. Is that a beginning? Is there more out there in terms of the corn market?
More out there.
In terms of growth, more than
I
a
think
2%
again, it
change?
depends on how quickly we can build out the E15 network. Jeff was talking this morning from Poet that it took a while on the E10, but I think that having that history of E10, people understand that this is a clean burning, green, American-built fuel and leads to our energy independence. If you recall back 12 or 15 years ago when this industry was kind of really getting going, there was a different energy balance worldwide. We were fighting wars over in the Middle East about energy issues, and we were remember campaigns sending billions of dollars to the Middle East here. Ethanol has helped to change that, along with other technology and petroleum production. So I'm an all of the above kind of a guy, and we want to go to E15 as a beginning. We think it will build corn demand. It's good for agriculture, good for our producers. Our livestock guys today said it also provides a great feed source for them as well, with the byproducts of that. So use American-grown energy in a clean way. This plant here is also particularly creative in its recycling of landfill gases, methanol coming off the landfill, using a recycling here, as well as fueling with biomass and wood chips. So those are the kind of technologies that we can use, all American and all energy dominance.
Secretary, a little bit different topic. Your state was devastated by the hurricane.
Yes.
The trade payments are based upon production. When you've lost all your production in a hurricane like that, do you see any changes that you guys might make in the trade aid program based upon production losses, or and do you expect to see when you might announce that second round of payments possibly?
Two good questions. Obviously, we contemplated normal circumstances. The farm programs and the farm bill that our senators in Congress have passed have good safety net provisions in normal circumstances. You'll have a drought here and there, but don't contemplate the kind of total devastation you see in the natural disasters we've had with hurricanes. I do, and I've asked our staff to look at the fact that while we did believe that in the mitigation payments should be based on actual production, not county averages and those kind of things was the intention, I think we've got to look at some considerations where people had crops that were good crops and were totally obliterated. We've got, you don't have much cotton here in South Dakota, but the cotton guys down there, they were looking at a bumper crop, and some of the people that I know personally said they had picked half their field, and then 6 hours later after the hurricane, you couldn't tell where they picked and where they hadn't. So these safety net programs don't contemplate that, and I think if Congress is generous enough to give us another supplemental regarding a disaster program for Hurricane Florence and Michael, then we need to look at those kind of considerations. The second tranche of payments, I'd like to get them out sooner rather than later. I actually had hoped to do it in October, and this is where OMB came back in and asked us to hold back. Part of the reason for that is there's not a good farmer in America, not a farmer in America that'd rather not have a good crop at a fair price than a government check. And so this second tranche is there to continue to incentivize our negotiators to get trade done and resolved. And the good news is we're making progress in that. We got the South Korea deal, we got the Canadian and the Mexican deal done. Now we're moving to EU and Japan and on to where China realizes they're going to be isolated in the fair and free trade area of this world, and hopefully they'll come along and stop stealing our stuff and play fair.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, there's a plan in the hands of your chief economist as well as your deputy secretary for over a month. It's called the Roebke plan that supports farm income immediately by raising loan levels 155% and makes the corn loan 303, the soybean loan 775 immediately, but it's a volunteer, no-cost program because it's a recourse loan with a 1% higher interest rate. And to address the ethanol industry, Jeff's concerns, as well as corn growers' concerns, it immediately takes all nationwide pumps from 10% to 11%. And that consumes another 500 million bushel of this year's corn crop. And the courts or the lawyers aren't going to be able to stop that. Can you present that to the farmers at your next stop as well as send it out through your farm service agencies to the Minnesota farmers, to the South Dakota and North Dakota farmers, because you said you like farmer input. They will immediately tell you, we want the option to use the Roebke plan to support farm income and put a lot more ethanol on the market immediately than compared to E15.
Sir, as you know, you just gave me that document as I walked in.
I did.
I'm happy to look at it. I haven't had a chance to look at it. We went right into the meeting, and it sounds innovative and creative, and we'll look at all kind of ideas. I'm looking for anything that can make farming sustainable, and the best opportunity to make farming sustainable is to make it profitable again. So we'll look at that.
I appreciate that, sir.
One more question.
Jeremy Lindeman, South Dakota Public Broadcasting. I want to ask you about the comment that was made earlier about making sure that the pumps across the country and as well as in communities like here in Chancellor make sure they have the E15. What's your response to that? What can you do on your end to ensure that occurs?
And again, the market will drive much of this. If we're able to get the delta in price that I think we can get with E15, that'll help. Consumers will make that choice. Retailers and businesses do what consumers like, and if they ask for E15, they're going to make an effort to do that. I mentioned the fact that I know in the past USDA has been a partner in some of that infrastructure build out, and there may be some ways that we can participate again without commitment. That's the kind of thing we're looking at. I like to think out loud and talk out loud with people in these kind of meetings where we can get better ideas. But those are the kind of things we'll be willing to consider, going forward.
And you think that's something you get bipartisan support on? Do you think you can get
I
past all
don't
that?
think so.
Absolutely, and we've had programs like that at the state level. When I was in the state legislature, we partnered as well with federal dollars and local business and ethanol industry dollars to make sure that that infrastructure was available. If we have pumps, consumers will choose the ethanol product because they know it's a product they can trust, that gives them better efficiencies, and is renewable right here at home. I think what was important about the discussion that we had today was recognizing that this executive order is moving forward, that the EPA is dedicated to following through on the president's time frame, and that we're smart enough to do it in a way that it's legally defensible. That's really the keys that we need to see to have this be successful so that we can put those 2 billion bushels of corn into crush for ethanol that drives up our market prices and make sure that we have this not just focusing on world markets, but also markets right here at home where we can use our products today.
And I think the timing on this is critical. And if you notice, when the small refineries were in trouble, the EPA acted very rapidly to take care of their need. My question is, can they act just as rapidly to take care of the needs of small producers? And that's what this is all about. Let's see the same kind of interest in getting this done in a timely fashion.
That's great. Good.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
It was an honor to meet you folks.
Yep, thank you.